So I do this weird thing with my breathing where I have to synchronize it with my thoughts. And I just didn't really tell anyone about it because I thought they would think I was crazy because it sounds a little crazy to me. But I eventually did decide to tell my parents about it, and I told my doctor about it, and then I went to see a therapist about it, and we found out it was actually OCD. So I got a lot of help for it, and now it doesn't feel as weird as it did before. Now I know what it is. It's not just me being crazy. That was one of my first experiences with stigma related to mental health. I didn't want to talk about it because it just seemed so weird and crazy. But when I actually got the help, it made things a lot better for me. I did end up getting medication for it, but I still deal with a lot of the stigma. Everything that has been related to my mental health for the past 3 years, it has been kept a secret from my grandparents who live with me. They have this idea that people who go to therapy have something that's like really, really wrong with them. So that's why I haven't been able to say anything. Like, I even keep my medication hidden in my room, in my drawer, in a sock. So my story is just one of the many stories about teenagers and their mental health and the stigma related to their mental health. Nowadays, mental health issues are much more prevalent in teenagers than they used to be, and this is no surprise considering the world that we live in today. Nowadays, teenagers are 3 times less likely to get a full night's sleep, which affects their mental health, and they're less likely to exercise, which also affects their mental health, and they spend way more time looking at screens and on social media, which even further affects their mental health. And older teens are also worried about student debt and the job market, so there's no surprise that teenagers are feeling super overwhelmed and anxious nowadays. The thing is, teenagers are having all these issues, but a large-scale study tracking students in Ontario for 20 years found that only 1 in 5 teenagers actually talk about their mental health issues. And this is due to stigma. An author that touches on the issue of stigma related to mental health is Kurt Vonnegut in Slaughterhouse-Five. In his book, Billy Pilgrim has a lot of symptoms that would be associated with what we call PTSD today, but his daughter doesn't take him very seriously and sees him as a nuisance and thinks that he's insane. And so she holds a lot of stigma against him, and this just makes everything so much worse for him. Mental health stigma is something that's been affecting people for years and can really affect anyone of any age. But back to teenagers. The world that teenagers live in today is much more stressful than the world that, say, their parents grew up in. So sometimes it can be hard to understand exactly what's going on with them and hard to take them as seriously, and so this is silencing a lot of teenagers' voices. So that statistic was really no surprise to me because I know what's been going on with my friends and all the people around me. So I actually got 2 of my friends to share their story about mental health and stigma and what they've been going through. But they want to stay anonymous, so I'm going to distort their voices, and yeah, I'm going to share their stories. Can you tell me your story?
The first time I had a panic attack, I was 13. I tried telling one of my friends about it, but all they told me was that they didn't think I had a panic attack, because if I did, that would be really bad. Even though I was only 13, I was pretty stressed about school, but when I tried talking about my stress with adults, they would tell me I was just a kid. I didn't know what real stress was. So naturally, after getting all these negative responses from people, I stopped bringing it up. My self-esteem had never been particularly great, but that year it started getting a lot worse. I felt like I didn't fit in with my friends, and I managed to convince myself that they didn't like me, that I was just annoying them. I guess in a way I projected my feelings about myself onto others, convincing myself that because I didn't like myself, they didn't like me either. I told myself they must think I'm annoying and fat and ugly and whatnot. I stopped talking as much. I started dressing in all black and hiding my face behind my hair because I was so self-conscious. I guess in a way, it was sort of a cry for help, but nobody noticed. I just figured nobody cared. At that time, there's a lot of yelling and arguing going on at home, so I started hiding in my room more, doing homework, listening to music, or just straight up crying. I felt so alone at school and at home. I felt like there was something wrong with me, and I felt like I didn't have anyone to talk to. It was a really hard time for me, and I feel like people need to be more aware that kids can be stressed, and kids can have mental health problems. I feel like if people had been more willing to talk about it, maybe things would have gotten better.
Did things end up getting better for you eventually?
So I got to high school, and school just got more stressful, of course. There was so much homework, so many assignments, as well as summatives and exams when the end of the semester came around. With each year, it got more and more difficult. So now I'm in grade 11, and I didn't get an ideal timetable. I have 3 grade 12 courses, as well as AP courses, and all of my other subjects are also really heavy. The amount of work I was getting, and I'm still getting, seems unfair to me. I started to get more and more anxious. I started having more panic attacks, as well as procrastinating more just because I so badly didn't want to face all this work I had to do. I would do homework throughout my lunch, so I stopped eating lunch, and then I would go home and do homework until I went to sleep. I never get a full 8 hours of sleep because I'm always up late studying or doing homework. I dropped my extracurriculars and hobbies, and I quit my job. I tried talking to a psychologist who strongly recommended that I drop one of my classes, but I didn't see this as an option.
Why wasn't it an option?
There's so much pressure to get good grades and get into university, and I felt like if I dropped a class, I would be even more stressed next year in grade 12, when I had to retake the class. All this schoolwork definitely started affecting my social life too. I don't get to hang out with friends as often anymore, and to be honest, it's become difficult to socialize because I'm always stressing about school, even when I'm with friends, and I find it difficult to talk to people, even some of my friends. I guess that kind of stuck with me from when I was 13. So yeah, I love learning, and I'm grateful to be able to go to school and get a good education, but I do believe that all the stress put on me by school has definitely had a huge negative impact on my mental health.
Since the third grade, I've felt an immense amount of pressure to succeed. With my peer group and my parents, not to mention the overwhelming push from the educational system for an academic post-secondary choice, I used to feel that university was the only way and any other option was equivalent to failure. The importance of ninth grade marks was skewed in my mind, which resulted in me putting unhealthy standards for myself and prioritizing the wrong things. I put my school life and my mental health in jeopardy by isolating myself to finish assignments and crying, even stressing to the point of puking, over the thought of failure. I believe the lack of other options at the time pushed me to the breaking point, and even though I am much better now, I would not wish the way I felt on anybody.
Did you talk to anyone about it at the time?
No.
Why not?
I just felt like, it was me making a big deal out of it.
So mental health stigma is an issue that affects many teenagers, and I wanted to do something about it. I decided to do a bake sale and raise money to donate to Youth Mental Health Canada because they help to raise awareness and to provide support networks to families with children dealing with mental health issues. It's very important to be aware of the mental health issues that teenagers face today. Another way that we can help solve this issue is by teaching students more about their mental health and ways to deal with it and deal with their stress in a more healthy way at schools. And if you are someone who's dealing with mental health issues, I have put some resources in the description of this video. And if you guys also want to donate to Youth Mental Health Canada, I'll also link them in the description.
And thank you so much for listening to my message. And we really can make a difference just by raising awareness of this issue.